Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans une nouvelle vidéo sur Learn to French. Je m'appelle Eden et j'enseigne le français. Hello and welcome to another video on Learn to French. If you are new here, my name is Eden and I teach French. So today is the Q&A video. We are going to read and answer your questions. I have gathered a few of your questions and I will do my best to answer them today. So the very first question is, what are the best tips to memorize French grammar and conjugation? And also, if you don't mind, would you please make more videos for DELF A1 because I'm going to take the test in the next 2 months. Of course, I have many videos regarding the DELF A1 and you can simply take a look at my playlist, DELF A1 Practice. So what are the best tips to memorize French grammar and conjugation? That's a very good question. The answer that I always give to this, of course, because French grammar and French conjugation are not the easiest things to learn. And if you feel like you are having trouble with grammar and conjugation, no matter the language, it doesn't apply to French only. If you are having trouble with grammar and conjugation, I would say that the best way to learn is to learn by context. So by theme or how to. If you were a beginner and you would like to know how to introduce yourself, then there you go. You have your first topic. You have your first theme. How to introduce yourself. Always learn by context. I would suggest maybe working on a grid or a table and writing the topics. So, for example, how to introduce yourself, how to talk about your job, how to talk about your family, how to. And from there, you can list down the vocabulary and then another column with the grammar and the conjugation that you need. If you are learning how to introduce yourself, for example, what will you need? Well, you will need to know how to say your name. That's your first grammar point right there. Je m'appelle. And from there, is there any conjugation? Yes, there is. The present tense. The present tense of the verb s'appeler. And you simply deconstruct everything in those topics into vocabulary, conjugation, and grammar, or vocabulary, grammar, and conjugation. If you learn within the context, then it's going to be much easier for you to remember things, rather than just learning grammar and conjugation like that. You won't know when to use it, and you will not be able to use it again. So organize by communication topics, how to, basically, and try to break down the elements. So don't just memorize like that. The second question that we have is, French grammar has a lot of exceptions to its rules. How to remember those exceptions? Also, can you please suggest an order in which we should study all the grammar topics, and the same with tenses? So yes, French grammar has a lot of exceptions to its rules. What we suggest as teachers is that you first learn the basics of a grammar point, for example. Once you master the key elements, you can head over to exceptions. The best tip that I can give here is to not feel discouraged. Of course, it may sound very basic, but there's always an exception. It's by being exposed to the language that you will learn them and master them. When you read a book or an article, or if you watch a video or a film, or if you're listening to a podcast episode, don't just do passive listening. Try to be active in your listening. Don't just be a passive learner or a passive watcher or a passive listener. Study everything. Analyze everything. For example, if there's a sentence that is appealing to you, or a sentence that you don't understand, or a sentence that you would simply like to analyze, then break it down. French is my native language, and even now I still learn to analyze every single thing that I find interesting or just appealing to me, or even a sentence that I don't understand or a construction that looks a bit odd to me, then I will analyze it and try to understand it. By doing so, you will be able to, once again, remember the steps that you took to be where you are. A more practical way, if you are someone who is very visual, then I would suggest organizing your findings. I love tables and grids, so you can use Microsoft Excel or simply Google Sheets and build your folder there and start organizing everything. if you have a grammar point, write down what you think you know about this specific grammar point. Are you able to write down what you know? If you master something, not talking about the exceptions, just the basic stuff. So if you are able to write down what you know or able to explain to someone what this grammar point is, then you're good to learn exceptions. You cannot move on without knowing the basics. So some work with simply writing down in lesson sheets or working with grids and tables and having the title and then vocabulary, grammar, conjugation. So you have a key grammar point and then you just write down the basic rules, how to form this or that, and then lastly the exceptions. Work on exercises as well that will help you kind of bring everything to life. Regarding the order in which you should study all the grammar topics and the tenses, I wouldn't really be against it, but I prefer working in topics. So not just grammar topics, for example. I have recently released an A1 study guide, and I will be working on more study guides in the future. If you are impatient and would like to learn immediately, then I suggest you buy one of those French workbooks and the most complete ones, for example. The best ones that I like to work with are the Alter Ego series because they're very comprehensive and they have everything in there. The next question that we have is Bonjour, oui, moi je voudrais savoir plus sur l'accord du participe passé avec le verbe être et aussi le verbe avoir. Si vous voulez faire un cours, je vous remercie infiniment. So, this person is asking about the agreement, l'accord of participe passé in passé composé. So, the verb être and avoir. I would say that this could be for the A2 level. I am going to briefly summarize it. Au passé composé, what you learn in A1 is that you make the past participle agree with the subject if you are using the auxiliary être and not avoir. So for example, j'ai mangé une pomme. I'm a woman, but manger, the past participle, stays unchanged because I'm using the auxiliary verb avoir. If I say, for example, I came home, je suis rentré, I'm using the auxiliary verb être. And the rule is, rentrer, the past participle, should agree with me, the subject. I am female, singular, so you should change your past participle into female singular, féminin singulier. Donc le verbe être et aussi le verbe avoir. However, sometimes you might see some sentences using passé composé where it says Les fleurs que j'ai achetées sentent très bon. The flowers that I bought smell very good. And here you see your past participle looks different. It's feminine plural, just like les fleurs. So when you see something like that, it might be confusing because you're thinking, hey, I'm using the auxiliary verb avoir. So why does my past participle change? I thought it was invariable. Well, not exactly. Your past participle will agree, your past participle using avoir, so using the auxiliary verb avoir, will agree with not the subject, but the object of your sentence if that object is before the verb. So let's break this sentence down. Les fleurs que j'ai achetées sentent très bon. So to find the object of the sentence, you need to ask yourself, j'ai acheté quoi? So the direct object. You need to find the direct object. J'ai acheté quoi? What did I buy? Les fleurs. Where is les fleurs located? Is it before the verb acheter or is it after? It is before. Les fleurs is feminine plural. So your past participle, acheter, should be feminine plural. Once again, your past participle will agree with the direct object if the direct object is before the verb. Votre participe passé s'accorde avec le COD de la phrase si le COD est placé avant le verbe. The next question. There are many conjugations. I always forget some of them. How to remember properly? This comes back to the first question of this video. I always suggest learning in the context. Regarding conjugation, what I like to do and what we used to do in France when I was at school, is that we learn the conjugation, of course, learning how to form the verbs, but also how does the verb end. So for example, we would memorize the endings of said tense. For example, le présent de l'indicatif for first group verbs. E, ES, E, ONS, EZ, ENT. I, ES, I, ONS, IZ, INT. Imparfait, AIS, AIS, AIT. IONS, IEZ, AIENT, and so on. It will be much easier for you to identify and memorize the verbs, especially the regular ones. So first group verbs and second group verbs. Third group verbs are a bit tricky, so I suggest you learn them by heart and work on exercises for that. The next question, what is the best way to conjugate verbs in subjunctive and how to remember it? Now, there is no best way to conjugate in subjunctive. This also comes back to the previous question, how to memorize your conjugation. I would say here, using subjunctive, you have to learn the most basic expressions that will use le subjonctif présent. Il faut que, je veux que, etc. And there are many tables that you can find online that gather all of the expressions, almost all of the expressions, because there are a lot of them, with which you can use le subjonctif présent. You can also work on exercises, worksheets. That's the best way to memorize, I would say. It requires a lot of time, of work, and motivation, but in the end, you'll be pretty satisfied with yourself. If you want, I can simply link in the description of this video a website where you can work on exercises as well. The next question is Bonjour, pouvez-vous expliquer comment utiliser le passé composé, le plus que parfait et l'imparfait, les trois ensemble? This is a very good question. When to use le passé composé, le plus que parfait, and l'imparfait, which are three tenses in the past tense in French. Basically, le passé composé, le plus que parfait, et l'imparfait can be used together. Of course, you probably know, if you are at this level already, you probably know how to use, or you probably know that you should use le passé composé with l'imparfait. In some sentences, depending on the context. Le passé composé is for done actions that are finished, done in the past. L'imparfait is ongoing actions or descriptions in the past or past habits. I'm not going to talk about passé composé and imparfait, but I would like to introduce le plus que parfait here. Le plus que parfait is what I like to call the past within the past. So if you're talking about an event in the past, something that happened that's already in the past, you're going to use le passé composé and imparfait to describe, of course. But what if you would like to talk about something still in the past, but happened before that? Le plus que parfait, ce matin, j'ai fait la cuisine. J'avais acheté des tomates et elles étaient dans mon frigo. This morning, I cooked. I had bought tomatoes and they were in my fridge. So basically, I'm talking about me being in the kitchen this morning, cooking. However, my tomatoes were there and I had bought them. J'avais acheté des tomates. So I didn't buy them this morning. I bought them before that. And that's when I would use le plus que parfait. You have le passé composé and imparfait, and if you would like to include something that happened in the past within the past, then use le plus que parfait. For present tense, I would talk about something in the present and switch over to passé composé. For example, je fais la cuisine, j'ai acheté des tomates et elles sont dans mon frigo. I am cooking, I bought tomatoes and they are in my fridge. Now let's use the past tense. J'ai fait la cuisine, j'avais acheté des tomates et elles étaient dans mon frigo. I cooked, I had bought tomatoes and they were in my fridge. Il faut versus je dois and j'ai besoin de. That's a very good one. Il faut and je dois represent obligation. Il faut et je dois. Il faut manger 5 fruits et légumes par jour. Je dois aller à la maison. Je dois aller au travail. So, il faut and je dois represent obligation. J'ai besoin de represent a need to do something or a need of something. J'ai besoin de farine pour faire mon gâteau. I need flour to bake my cake. Or j'ai besoin de travailler pour gagner de l'argent. I need to work to earn money. Now the structures. So, of course, il faut can use a noun right after, il faut des tomates. Or you can use an infinitive verb, il faut manger. Or you can use a subjunctive présent verb. So, for example, il faut que j'aille au travail. I have to go to work. Je dois is going to use an infinitive verb. Je dois travailler, je dois manger, je dois partir. J'ai besoin de is going to use either a noun or an infinitive verb. J'ai besoin de tomates, or j'ai besoin de manger, or j'ai besoin de travailler. And that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this Q&A video. If you have questions, of course, you can simply leave them in the comment section down below. Cette vidéo est maintenant terminée. Merci beaucoup d'être resté avec moi aujourd'hui et je vous dis à très bientôt pour une autre vidéo sur Learn to French. Au revoir!